Hello, the education team joining you here from the Detroit Zoological Society. I'm Sandy.
And I'm Claire.
And we will have a special guest joining us a little bit later today to enhance our dose of virtual vitamin Z for you. We are going to talk about one of our newest additions to the zoo. When people think about the new additions to the zoo, a lot of times they think about large charismatic animals like wolves, lions, tigers, or giraffes. At the Detroit Zoological Society, we celebrate and save all wildlife. This type of animal holds a special place in my heart as they're so important to our ecosystem and they are considered an environmental indicator, meaning that they can tell us if something is off in the environment. This animal is specifically the Tokyo salamander. Let's learn a little bit about the salamander. The Detroit Zoological Society is here. And the Tokyo salamander lives here in Japan. And they have an incredibly small range. They occur in forests that stretch from coastal areas to hilly areas as well. This is what they look like. They breed in areas that temporarily flood with seasonal changes. And these areas get really muddy, and this is where they lay their eggs. This area is called a temporal pond. They have a really unique egg sac. Their egg sac is banana-shaped, and you can see it here. And you can actually see the eggs are starting to develop within that sac a little bit. We are one of the first zoos that have been able to successfully help these salamanders reproduce. It can actually be a challenge to recreate these temporal pond atmospheres to help the breeding occur. The Tokyo salamander population is threatened by habitat loss due to infrastructure development, such as housing or road construction. Water pollution is also a problem. And their habitat is actually starting to dry out, which can make it difficult for them to be able to lay their eggs. They are also sometimes collected for pet trade. Because of this declining population, the Detroit Zoological Society has been working to develop an insurance population. And an insurance population is something that will help us ensure that we have them for future generations, and that we can hopefully at some point reintroduce the species into the wild. The Detroit Zoological Society is very lucky to have Dr. Ruth as the director of the National Amphibian Conservation Center. She comes to the zoo with a ton of expertise on how to care for and breed amphibians. We're super excited to have her join us today to answer some of the questions you may have about the Tokyo salamander. Type your questions in the comment section, and we will ask Dr. Ruth your questions. How are you, Dr. Ruth?
Hi, I'm good today.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about why this hatching is so special?
It's really special because this is a very uncommon salamander that we see in zoos, and it's a rare salamander in the wild too. So we're really happy to have actually bred it at a zoo.
Why does the Detroit Zoological Society work so hard to have assurance populations of salamanders like this?
Assurance populations are really important to have. If you have a wild population that has numbers that are getting smaller, it's important to keep populations in captivity so that you can help keep those wild populations wild, so you can replenish those populations with the animals you're breeding.
Ruth, we have a question from one of our viewers on Facebook. Alex is curious as to what species of amphibian are the easiest to breed?
That's a very difficult question to answer. There's a lot of frogs that you put a male and a female together and they'll just breed. There are some species of amphibians that the females don't need a male to breed and they can just breed on their own. The females can. So I don't actually have an answer of which specific amphibian is the easiest to breed, but if I had to throw any one out there, I would guess it would be the African clawed frog.
Dr. Ruth, back to the Tokyo salamander, how fast do they grow once they hatch?
So that is going to vary based on temperature and how much they're eating. And that's true for any amphibian. But with these guys, it will probably take them about a year before they're full grown.
And how big do they get?
The adults are about 4.5 inches long.
What is it that they eat while they're growing?
So the babies are very small when they hatch out, and they're carnivorous as soon as they're born. So we have to find really tiny food items to feed them. We have little tiny worms we feed them called microworms as soon as they're hatched out. And then we feed them little aquatic animals called copepods. And as they get bigger, we feed them bigger and bigger items, bigger worms, and then bugs and insects.
Are there any special precautions that you and your staff have to take while you're taking care of these types of salamanders?
With all amphibians, we have to wear gloves. Their skin is very sensitive, and the oils on our skin will damage their skin. That's true when we're handling amphibians, but we don't handle amphibians very often. We still have to wear gloves when we're working in their environment. So if we're touching the plants or touching the water, the oils on our skin can come off. So that's something we have to be aware of, and we have to wear gloves.
That's so great to know. Thank you.
Ruth, I have another kind of general amphibian question from one of our viewers on Facebook. They're interested if you know offhand, this might be a complicated one, how many species of amphibians are endangered in our care at the Detroit Zoo?
In our care at Detroit Zoo, I can give you a percentage. About 60% of the species we're caring for right now at Detroit Zoo are endangered. And that will vary depending on what the government is calling endangered from day to day. But right now, it's roughly 60% of the species.
And then do you know offhand how many species of salamanders are in our care at the National Amphibian Conservation Center?
We just got a different number of that, so I, at the moment, don't remember offhand.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ruth.
Yes, thank you very much.
If our viewers have any other questions that they want to ask, they can type them into the comments, and we will come back and answer the questions in the comments. Classification of animals can be really challenging. It's something that scientists do to group animals together that they're studying, and they group them based on like characteristics. It's incredibly complex, and it changes over time. As we learn more about animals, we actually group them differently. So for example, the Tokyo salamander was once grouped with the clouded salamander, but they were recently split into their own group. Both of these salamanders are a part of a family of Asiatic salamanders, meaning that they both live in Asia. So we're going to see if you can find some items around your home, and you're going to need some supplies because you're going to help make some salamanders today. So the items you're going to need is a popsicle stick and items you have around your home. So I made a salamander here with a popsicle stick. And let's talk a little bit about salamander characteristics. They tend to have really long, narrow bodies, 4 legs, and a really long tail. So you can see here, I've made a salamander, and my salamander is blue. He's got brown twig legs, and he's got a pipe cleaner tail, and he's got black dots. Now, remember when we're talking about classification, we want to take animals and look at them and group them based on like items or like characteristics. So I made another salamander here, and this salamander is orange. He's got a long tail, he's got black polka dots, and he's got stick legs. So if I look at my 2 salamanders here, I can find things that are the same, and I can find things that are different. So if I'm going to classify them, because I'm the scientist classifying these salamanders, I can choose whether or not they're going to be grouped together or if they're going to be grouped separately. If you make salamanders at home, I'd love to be able to see them. And if you decide how you want to classify them, do share those with us in the comments below. Doing this activity will help build certain skills. And some of those skills are building fine motor skills, so for example, finding these sticks, breaking them apart, gluing them on here. Observation skills, so thinking about how a salamander is long and skinny. And creative expression. I made an orange salamander, I made a blue salamander, and I have a green salamander somewhere too. The vocabulary that we talked about today was indicator, which means to let us know something is different maybe. An amphibian, which is an animal that goes through metamorphosis. Classification means to group animals based on like characteristics. And temporal pond, which means an area that becomes wet based on weather. Thanks so much for joining us for the dose of virtual vitamin Z. Join us at 4 o'clock where my colleague and friend Zara will be sharing a little bit more information about an animal that lives at the zoo. Thanks so much for joining us.